Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. This is part of Dear Texas Day, which stands for Drop Everything and Read Texas. It was a program that HarperCollins had started for the Children's Division years ago, more over 20 years at least. We kind of did our little Texas twist to it. You know us Texans, we always got to improve upon something. Today, not only in this bookstore, but in 30 bookstores across the state in 24 cities, we have 86 authors reading and doing book signings to encourage people to read, to celebrate the enjoyment of books and things of that nature. So I thank you all for coming. The first person we're going to have is Art Anthony. He has won 2 book awards from us, but he's going to read from his latest one. So Art, I'm going to let you introduce your book.
Okay, thank you. Strange reading your own book. I have to start off by telling you that my original book that I wrote was Sulfur River, and this book and it won the award too, but this book that I'm going to talk to you about today is Return to Sulfur River. I'd like to ask how many of you people in here know where Sulfur River is? That's pathetic. Yeah, you better know, Phyllis Ann. It is actually a river in Texas, and it's about 75 miles east of Dallas. And it runs on a parallel line with the Red River, about 50 miles from the Red River, all the way over into Arkansas, and there it empties into the Red River. And there was, all of my books that I do always have an historical event that I base them on. And I'm going to go into the historical event because I think it's better on the first one, and then I'm going into the reading. Don't worry, you won't have to listen to this long. But the historical event was 2 young men from East Texas, you know, poor as dirt, in 1863 were drafted into the Confederate Army. And the only action that these men see is the Louisiana Red River campaign. And I know we've got a lot of people in here that know a lot about the Confederate War. I'd like to know if any of you have ever heard of the Louisiana Red River campaign. See, there again, that's pretty bad. Well, I'll tell you this. The Union Army sent 30,000 men and also ships to support those 30,000 men up the Red River to capture Shreveport and Texarkana and stop off all of this material that was coming through there into the rest of the South. They had the Gulf blockaded, so it was hard to get stuff into Alabama and Georgia and those places. And even into Texas, they had them pretty good, well blockaded. So they dock either on the border of Texas down in Matamoros or in Mexico, and then they would, so to speak, truck it on up through this direction. Well, they were trying to shut that off. Well, it was a pretty famous battle. The only thing Louisiana could do was to mount an army of 11,000 men, and half of those were Texans. And you know, there just weren't any men left around to gather up, but they did get a good guy as a commander. In those days, when you got wounded and you lived for a few days and they couldn't do anything more for you, they sent you home. So in Louisiana was a guy named Taylor who was home. He was a pretty good fighter. He was a West Point graduate. And so they got him to be commander of this Louisiana brigade that was going to try to fight these men. And he he knew he could, 11,000 and 30,000, there's no way you can go head to head with that, you know. That's too many odds. So he kept retreating up the red, waiting for the Union general to make a mistake. And he made a terrible mistake. I mean, you wouldn't make that kind of mistake. He sent all these 30,000 men and wagons and all the support necessary for that up a path 21 foot wide. And in front he had an army of about 4,000 men, and then he had all the Teamsters. The Teamsters couldn't even turn their teams around in 21 foot. So at the end of that trail, that's where Taylor attacked him, and he routed him 9 miles back, and the Yankee losses were over 5,000 that year in that battle. And they fought on and on until Grant sent him a telegram and told him he had sent him 10,000 troops from the east. He needed those back. Taylor had tricked him into thinking he had 20,000 men. And so he added up the odds and he said, well, he's got me outnumbered 2-1. I'm going back to New Orleans where it's nice. And so he retreated back. But that was a big battle, and it was considered a victory for the South, because they didn't have a lot of victories coming at that time. The two characters that I created in the original book continue on in Return to Sulfur River. And the first one and the main character is a guy named Art Logging. And his buddy, who he met, by the way, when he was in the Confederate Army, is Darrell Stroud. And they live and I'm going to give you a few names because some of these are small towns. And I'll give you the bigger ones. Naples, Bryan's Mill, Marietta, Mount Pleasant. Anybody know these towns in East Texas? Hey, see, we're making progress. Well, that's great. Well, this book centers around that area, and these kids, they've come home and they are just confronted by everything. A crooked lawyer that wants to take their small owning that they have away from them, and they turn into gunfighters is what happens. You know, you couldn't call a sheriff, and actually the sheriff was in with the lawyer, so you sure couldn't call him on this thing. So they have another problem in this book that comes up. The Comanche Indians, who had been giving them heck in the West, in fact they had raided settlement after settlement, because even the northern soldiers who had taken over Texas now, this was 1867 now, they had taken over, could not protect them. It was too much area to try to protect those people over there. And a lot of atrocities occurred at that time. Both sides, by the way. And, you know, they'd say, well, you did this to my family, and he'd say, I'm going to do this to your family. And when you get that going, that becomes hard to control. But anyhow, they have the Comanches who have decided to come east and terrify the East Texas section. And they come across Oklahoma Territory, and they come through the Chickasha, which is on one side in the middle. Is that time?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. Anyhow, they've come down and they're being warned that this attack's going to happen because the Union Army hadn't been able to catch up with them yet. Army Sergeant Best came by and told the boys, we think a Comanche killing party of about 100 has attacked farms in the area of Paris and Clarksville, killing over 40 white settlers, burning over 25 homes and barns, and killing livestock. They're attacking over 270 miles east from their normal area. Their trail of terror started 4 days ago. 2 companies of troops, Union troops, are trying to catch up with them, but haven't done it, so they'll try to get back to their village which is 270 miles west of here, and I think they'll strike on their way home. They are in your area somewhere. You must make arrangements to prepare for this Indian attack. Art and Darrell got their people together and began making preparation. The plan was for some of them to go in Art's house, who had a stone-built house, and some of them to go also in Darrell's house. He had a stone-built house too, which made a big difference if you're going to fight. So the Indians came to the ferry at Bryan's Mill, and after crossing the ferry, they killed the owner and burned the ferry and house. His family, however, escaped. The Indians then attacked Bryan's Mill, and the people in Bryan's Mill needed all the help they could get. And they had sent a Chandler Anthony to Art to gather up men to help them fight. And he comes in, and they fight the Indians and end up stopping the Comanche Indians in the big town of Bryan's Mill. So I'm not going to read any more. I just wanted to know if there's any questions that you might have. No questions.
Will you have a third book?
I have it almost completed, yes. It is 1828, 1838, Texas, and of course it goes over the independence fight, San Jacinto, that type of thing. It took me 10 years to write this book, so don't get discouraged. But the reason was I didn't have enough time. I was trying to work and make a living, and I didn't have enough time to devote to it. But I did this. I got a pad. I had 4 legal pads, and every time I'd have an idea, I'd write it down. I wasn't at that time, I wasn't fluent enough, and I'm still not, to store that in my phone or something like that. But a lot of my ideas would come when I'd be laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and I'd get up and I'd write them down. And then and the reason I did that was because I'd have an idea, and then I'd try to think of it the next day, and I couldn't do it. So I got to where I'd just get up and write it down, and that would jog my memory, and then I'd go on back. So if there's no more questions.
One over.
Oh.
How much research would you do for some of the battles and conflicts?
I spent 2 weeks, I should say, I wasted 2 weeks down in Louisiana trying to find out about this Red River campaign that they'd had down there. Most of the people knew nothing about it. The libraries didn't even have anything. I live in Tuttle, Oklahoma now, so I came up to the librarian in Norman, and I told her what the problem was, and she took me back to a big place. I mean, it was huge. 3 times as big as this place here. And all there was dusty books. And she took out 3 books for me. One of them had all copies of all the dispatches between all the officers in that battle. And I can tell you this, they were bad spellers, and they didn't have good penmanship. And those were the officers. So, but I read that, and then I said, and I read the other 2 books she gave me, and I said, this is exactly what I need. I said, oh, I've been looking for this, and so on, and I said, I've got to check these books out. And she said, you can't check these books out. I said, lady, nobody's touched them in 10 years. What are you talking about? Well, she finally let me do it, and I kept them 3 months after that. But I called her every time to renew them. I said, don't worry, I've got your precious books here, and I'm not going to do anything to them.
Still trying to decipher them.
Right. But that was my first research that I really did on it. And of course, you're always doing research. If you're writing, you are doing research all the time. You're looking for somebody that's got an angle that you don't know about, or is smarter than you, and there's a lot of people in that category for me. but they know something and they can help you. And you've got to be on the lookout for that. So, I thank you very much. And I would appreciate everybody buying my books.